Yes, sir.
You are able to see the screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Uh, Welcome to the class of cyber security where we are revising certain concepts. I think this is the third set of revision that I am doing. And after the class, as usual, I'll be sharing this material. You can use this material in this third set. So I am covering some of the topics like phishing. I am covering different phishing techniques and a sample of writing a phishing mail and what is forensics, what is digital forensics, what is a digital evidence and types of digital evidences, working and architecture of botnets and botnet attacks. Okay, and case study of Yahoo Inc. versus Akasha Aurora. These things we are studying. By default, cybersecurity runs with different case studies, or we need to refer to different case studies as an examples. Because if I take phishing, for example, when we are asked to give an example for phishing, you may explain this is a web phishing, a phone phishing, a spear phishing, but you have to refer to some examples of phishing. Now, we know that phishing is a criminal activity. Generally, people can use different social engineering techniques to manipulate people into performing actions or divulging confidential information. So, sensitive information fraudulently they want to acquire usernames, password, credit card details by masquerading as trustworthy entity in an electronic communication. This is what is known as phishing. Sridhar, hello.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You are able to understand the phishing concept.
Yes, sir.
Can you explain in your own words what is phishing? Hello, hello.
Sir, it's an attack means on
Hmm.
servers.
Not on server. See, it will be. See, phishing can happen through email. Email will not send to server, right? Basically, we want to collect information from some people. Why do I want to go for phishing attack? I want to collect some sensitive information, username, password, and credit card details. If I ask you to give the credit card details, you will not give directly. So what Fisher will do? He will masquerade as trustworthy entity in an electronic communication. He will say, I am the bank manager. Your KYC compliance, you have to execute. You have to give details of the KYC. KYC stands for know your customer. So then obviously what you will do is suppose you are having a loan account, say for example, you are constructing a house. So one installment they have released, two more installments, some 10 more lakhs you have to receive from him. So in such situation, if somebody sends some email or message saying that I am bank manager from SBI, you are my dear customer and you have taken the loan, fill up these informations and send me immediately. If I say as a SBI bank manager from where you have taken the loan, immediately you'll give all the informations. Oh, password you will write, username you will write, uh, house loan account number you will write, all those details you will write. So that becomes a room for the fraudulent to fraudster to acquire sensitive information, right? This is how it is possible. Phishing attack is not an attack on the server. It will be sent to different people, okay, and they may send to anybody. But if I send to a farmer to whom who has not done any such activity, related activity, has not taken house loan or some vehicle loan, in supposed to some such people, if I send, he will not answer. That's why they will do some kind of analysis. They will analyze, they will track of our behavior, okay, then they will catch hold of such people and send the phishing mail. Okay, I think Siddharth has joined and left. Ask him to join. Okay, name any four companies which are into e-commerce and victims of phishing attack. You should know some companies. That means to write on the examination day, you should know some companies. You should remember name of the companies which are doing e-commerce and have become victims of phishing. It is not only one man or a common man who has become the victim of the phishing attack. There are many standard banks, for example, Bank of America, Amazon.com, Watchovia, PayPal. These are famous companies which are into e-commerce and have become the victims of phishing attack. Apart from this, it has been told that if I send for 100 employees, minimum 40 number of people will click on the phishing email links and they are likely to give their credentials. So it is very easy to deceive somebody on the internet if they click and if they give some information. So your email account will be hacked and they may get lot of information from the email account. The question is analyze the ways to identify fraudulent email, right? How do you identify the email is fraudulent email? So if you go to the internet and if I search whether I have been pruned, PWNED, pruned, then you'll come to know and you can check. There are many tools which helps you to know whether your uh, email that you have received or your own account has been hacked by somebody or not. Phishing email may include request for the following. So given email without using any tools, by reading a given email, how do you identify? So generally phishing email includes request for the following. What are those? Sensitive personal information. Legitimate institution will not request this kind of information through email. Lost personal information. Legitimate institution keep backup copies of the data, so it is extremely unlikely that they would lose your information. So they won't ask such information, first point. So over phone or over mail, they won't ask. Money in exchange for your safety. Ignore these threats unless there are signs that the threat is personal, in which case you should immediately notify the police. These are the some points that you can write with respect to the question. Analyze the ways to identify fraudulent email. Discuss different phishing techniques in brief. Discuss different phishing techniques in brief. Explain anti-phishing technique to any one of the above techniques. Explain. So different phishing techniques. Let us come to the first question. Most methods of phishing use some form of technical explanations in an email. So misspelled URLs, use of misspelled use of by phishers, such as uh, they will they cannot take the original URL. They will be using you know misspelled URL. Another common tricks to make you make the anchor text for a link. The link actually goes to the Fisher text. Means what? The anchor text means what? So it appears to be say Amazon.com, but when you click, it will not go to the Amazon.com. It go to the Fisher site where your information gets submitted. An old method of spoofing links used in links containing as a way to include user name and password in a web link. For example, the link www.google.com might deceive a casual observer into believing that it will, whereas the link directs the browser a page on the user of name google.com. The page opens normally supplied. Okay, this is what happens actually. Once the victim visits the website, the deception is not over. Some phishing scam uses the JavaScript commands in order to alter the address bar. This is done either by placing a picture of the legitimate entity's URL over the address bar, or by closing the original address bar and opening a new containing the legitimate URL. An attacker can even use a trusted website's own scripts against the victim. These types of attacks, known as cross-site scripting, are particularly problematic because they direct the user to sign in at their bank or service's own web page, where everything from the web address to the security certificate appears correct. In reality, the link to the website is crafted to carry out the attack, although it is very difficult to spot without specialist knowledge. Just such a flaw was used in 2006 against the PayPal. Okay, so phone phishing. Not all phishing techniques require fake website. In an incident in 2006, messages that claimed to be from a bank told users to dial a phone number regarding problems with their bank accounts. Once the phone number owned by the phisher and provided by a voice or IP was dialed, prompts told users to either enter their account numbers and PIN. 1 second. Voice phishing sometimes uses fake caller ID data to give the appearance that the calls come from a trusted organization. Nearly all legitimate email messages from companies to their customers will contain an item of information that, are, that is not readily available to phishers. Some companies like PayPal always address their customers by their uh, you know customers by their usernames in email. So if an email address says a user in a generic fashion, dear PayPal customer, it is likely to be an attempt at phishing. Spam filters can also help by reducing the number of phishing emails that users receive in their inboxes. Anti-phishing measures have been implemented as features embedded in browsers as extensions or toolbars for browsers and a part of website login procedures. For example, some anti-phishing toolbars display the real domain name for the visited website. The pet name extensions for Firefox lets users type in their own labels for website so they can later recognize when they are back at the correct site. If the site is a suspect, then the software may either warn the user or block the site outright. Internet Explorer version 7 is intended to defend users from phishing as well as deceptive or malicious software. It also features full user control of ActiveX and better security framework. Hello? Hello?
Yes, sir. Listening.
Sridhar, can you see this screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. Are you able to read what is written here?
No, sir.
Why? It is not
Um,
visible
no, sir. It's too small.
now?
Yes, sir. I can.
Okay, can you read this question?
Assume you are asking to do phishing attack on SBI and PayPal customers.
Ah,
Write phishing email to collect critical details.
critical details.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So it is a very simple exercise. Assume you are asked to do phishing attack on SBI and PayPal customers. So you are writing an email to the SBI customer or PayPal customers. Write phishing emails to collect critical details. So if this is the assignment given, how do you do?
I can ask for usernames and password for SBI
Yes,
account to user.
correct. But you should not ask directly. If you ask
Yes, sir.
directly somebody, you give your credentials like credit card number, debit card number, user ID, password, they won't give. As I told you, what you have to do? So you should have analyzed his activities. Like you should know whether he has taken bank loan, house loan in a particular bank, which bank, okay, or whether he has taken personal loan or gold loan, or whether he is making some transaction with respect to fund transfer to person X to person Y, and that person X maybe in India, and he may be sending some money, okay, to the person who is in America. You should know some context of him. Then you should write a proper email. As I have given an example, you have taken the housing loan for 10K, first installment is released. In that situation, so knowing that he has taken housing loan, then you should write, dear SBI customer, we need to collect your KYC details immediately in order to process your housing loan next installment. So then provide the details immediately. That means he will give the details. So such an email you have to write. So one for the SBI and another for PayPal customers. You have to assume some situation. So that is what is done here. In this example, the targeted at South Trust Bank users, the phisher has used an image to make it harder for anti-phishing filters to detect by scanning for text commonly used in phishing email. there are softwares which are called anti-phishing filters, which actually filters and they won't allow such emails to deliver to your inbox. So to cheat such softwares, they will use for example, if you are writing an email to fish the SBI customers, SBI logo only they will use. If you want to spoof PayPal customers, PayPal logo they will use. They will use the trademark. In the same way, here Trusted Bank TM, this logo is used. By using that logo, the reader of the email gets a kind of confidence. Hey, this logo I have seen, this is my bank only, my trusted bank only. That is same logo, same letters, same trademark, same some icon, some picture is here. So he will tend to think that it is a from a some trustworthy person or bank or organization. That's why that is written here. Okay. In this example, targeted at South Trust Bank user, Fisher has used an image to make it harder for anti-phishing filters to detect by scanning for text commonly used phishing emails. So in that he has written, dear valued customer of Trusted Bank, we have received notice that you have recently attempted to withdraw the following amount from your checking account while in another country. In this information is not correct. Someone unknown may have access to your account. As a safety measure, please visit our website via the link below your personal information. Then you will go to Sridhar, you are there?
Yes, sir, but I am not visible, sir.
Okay. But now is it visible?
No, sir.
Not visible? Now?
No,
Is
sir.
it visible? Okay. In this, just I am explaining whatever is there. Can you some link is given here? What is this the link called?
I'm not seeing the screen, sir.
Oh, okay, no problem. Suppose if you are having a fish mail, some link is given within that. That link will go to the SBI website or to the Fisher's website. Hello?
Fisher's website, sir.
Very good, very good. Thank you. Fisher's website. It will go to the Fisher's website. What is this link is called or text is called?
I
Anchor
don't know.
text or anchor link. Okay. Anchor text or anchor link. So this is the link which take you to the Fisher's website, not to the SPA or PayPal or Trusted Bank. Once you have done this, the fraud department will work to solve this discrepancy. We are happy to have you chosen us to do the business with some information so that the victim believes in that way they have written. Such a thing you should have a practice. See, this is very important. By having done this exercise, you will be able to answer what is phishing with an example, or you can able to solve some case study. In this example, spelling mistakes in the email and the presence of an IP address in the link visible in the tooltip under the yellow box are both clues that it's a phishing attempt. Spelling mistake in the email, 1. Presence of an IP address in the link. Okay. So another giveaway is the lack of personal greeting, although the presence of a personal details is not a guarantee of legitimacy. Hello.
Yes, sir.
So can you understand what is the meaning of lack of a personal greeting? Suppose if SBI bank manager himself is going to send you uh, some greetings, and if you have taken say some vehicle loan or some personal loan, they would have addressed with your full name, with your full credentials, even loan number, because all details are there with them. They are stored with even with the backup. But this guy is not having any information. He is saying simply, yeah, hi, dear PayPal customer, dear SBI customer, dear trusted bank customer. Simply he says. So this is general greeting, lack of personal greeting, and that indicates that the mail may be a phishing email. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Digital forensics. The unit 3, important question. What is digital forensics? Mention any branches of it and elaborate any one its branches, any one of its branches with respect to evidences and investigation. So there may be a question, explain what is digital forensics. Definitely, because digital forensics is part of your syllabus. Digital forensics. Very first, we should know what is forensics. Then it will be easy to explain digital forensics. What is forensics? A forensic is a collection and analysis of evidences. Some event has happened. With respect to that event, we should collect and analyze the evidences using scientific test or technique to establish facts against crime for presenting in a legal proceeding. Therefore, forensic science is a scientific method of gathering and examining information about the past, which is then used in court of law. Hello?
Yes, sir.
Digital forensics. Now we have to define what is digital forensics. Digital forensics uses scientifically derived and proven methods towards preservation of evidences, collection of evidences, validation of evidences, identification of evidences, analysis of evidences, interpretation of evidences, documentation of evidences, and presentation of the entire analysis, entire investigation that one has done on different digital devices, and the entire presentation of the report should be such that it should be presentable in the court of law in that way. So digital evidence, digital forensics is implementation of scientifically derived and proven methods towards the preservation, collection, validation, identification, analysis, interpretation, document, and presentation of digital evidences from digital devices. And the presentation should be in such a way that it should be in a presentable manner. That means how judge wants in the court of law, that way it should be there. Pin to pin information. The purpose of facilitation or furthering the reconstruction of events to be criminal or helping to anticipate unauthorized actions shown to be disruptive to planned operations. So this definition you have to write for digital forensics. We said it is a process of collection, identification, analysis of digital evidences. Then what is a digital evidence is the question. A digital evidence, a piece of digital information that supports a conclusion. Because of that, you come to a proper conclusion. So digital evidences are very, very important. Any data that is in support of a particular incident which is recorded or preserved on any medium by a computer system or other similar digital device that can be read or understood by a person or a computer system or other similar device. It includes display, printout, or other output of that data. Hello?
Sir, example for digital evidence, sir.
I have a lot of examples. I will tell you, okay? Examples. There are 8 examples here. Email, for example. Digital photographs. You are there?
Yes,
See,
sir.
digital photographs, ATM transaction logs, word processing document, instant message histories, files saved from accounting programs, spreadsheets, internet browser histories, databases, the contents of a computer memory. See, if I say I have not sent this mail, but actually I have sent the mail, then you'll be having some history, right?
Yes,
So
sir.
your inbox, the server which is facilitating you to send the email will be having track of all the informations. You may say, you may deny that I have not sent this. We called non-repudiation. Even though it is done, you will claim that I have not done. Then should have a technology mechanism to prove that you have done this. So obviously we go for some logs in the server. That is an example. Okay. Characteristics of digital evidence. So what are the characteristics of digital evidence, they will ask. So we will say it should be admissible. Digital evidence should be authentic. Digital evidence should be fragile. Digital evidence should be accurate. It should be complete, convincing to juries. All this should be there. Now we'll see one by one. Admissible. Digital evidence should be should have admissible characteristic. That means what? Conformity with the common law and legislative rules. It should be authentic in linking to data to specific individuals and evidence. So digital evidence is authentic or not. That means what? Say Sridhar has sent the email to Arun Kumar, but if I am using evidence of the email that Hanumantaraya is sending to Ramaraya, then it is not authentic. It is not related to him. It should be specific, linking to individuals and events who has involved in that event. It should be related to those individuals and that particular event. That is what we mean by authentic digital evidence. It should be specific to individuals and events. It should be fragile, okay, easily altered, damaged, or destroyed. So it is the characteristic of the evidence. Evidence. See, if I get a digital photo print, so if possible, the victim, if possible, the person who has done some crime, attack, he will try to modify the photograph. That is possible because it is a digital evidence. So then the process of investigation should be able to identify whether this particular digital photograph has been altered, when it has been altered. Okay, that is required. So digital evidences are fragile, easily alterable. It can be damaged or destroyed. Once people know that there is an investigation started about a particular event, they may try to destroy that particular evidence. They may sit at the faraway place. They may issue the command to destroy a particular digital evidence, like a botnet attack, right? Botnets. It should be complete. It should be accurate. Accurate means what? We should be able to believe it, and it should be consistent. And further, it should be convincing to juries. Then only digital evidences will be considered. Discuss types of digital evidences and list any 8 examples of digital evidences. This is one question. Types of digital evidences. Now we know what is a digital evidence. Now we are coming to types of digital evidences. Persistent data. The digital evidence may have persistent data, volatile data. Okay. So these are the types. Meaning of the persistent, remains intact when the digital device is turned off. So data is there available. See, we say data in the main memory is not persistent. Data stored in the hard disk or secondary memory is persistent. That means what? Even after switching off the power, the data is available. Right? So you are working on some program, some document you are creating. You are saving that. So when you switch off your computer or when power goes off, so the data will not be erased, saved in the hard disk. So next day you're coming and data is available, right? So that means data that remains intact when digital device is turned off. Hard drives, disk drives, removable storage devices such as USB drives or flash drives are example of persistent data devices. That's an example of type of digital evidence. Volatile data, which is data that would be lost if the digital device is turned off. Deleted files are computer history, the computer history, temporary files, and web browsing history. Volatile. Example of digital evidences. So as I have told you, emails, digital photographs, ATM transaction logs, word processing documents, instant message, histories, files saved from accounting program, spreadsheets, internet browser histories, databases, the contents of a computer, computer backups, computer printouts, global positioning system tracks, logs from a hotel's electronic door logs, and digital video or audio files, and any other device which is available in support of a particular individual and event that has happened. Okay. Two more questions I have to discuss. Important questions. Analyze the working of architecture of botnets. Explain any 4 cybercrimes that can be committed using the botnets. Suggest technologies, tools to secure from botnets. Okay, it's an important question. Botnets have become one of the biggest threats to security systems today. Why? You have to see different types of botnets are there. For medical health records hacking, only different types of bots. To share, to sell the shares, okay, of a particular company, of a particular holder, there are different bots. There are bots which can change the values of the cryptocurrency values, and it is very difficult to verify particular software, identify the particular software as a botnet. Very challenging. Their growing popularity among cyber criminals comes from their ability to filtrate almost any internet connected device from DVR players to corporate mainframes. Botnets are also becoming a larger part of the cultural discussion around cybersecurity. Facebook's fake and ad controversy and Twitter bot fiasco during 2016 presidential election worry many politicians and citizens about the disruptive potential of botnets. See, botnets can play the role even in the election. Recently published studies from MIT have concluded that social media bots and automated accounts play a major role in spreading fake news. The use of bots to mine cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin is a growing business for cyber criminals because they will get money out of it when they mine it. It is predicted that trend will continue, resulting in more computers infected with mining software and more digital wallets stolen. Aside from being tools for influencing elections and mining cryptocurrencies, botnets are also dangerous to corporations and consumers because they are used to deploy malware, initiate attacks on websites, steal personal information, and defraud advertisers. It's clear botnets are bad, but what are they exactly and how they can protect your personal informations and devices, or really they can create the harm to your devices. Okay, so to understand this, very first you have to understand how do botnets work. We know that it's a botnet is a term which is a blend of the words robot and network in a broad sense. That exactly what botnets are: a network of robots used to commit cybercrime. The crime commi- the cyber criminal controlling them are called bot masters or bot herders. To build a botnet, bot masters need as many infected online devices or bots under their command as possible. The more bots connected, bigger the botnet. The bigger the botnet, the bigger the impact. So size matters. The criminal's ultimate goal is often financial gain, malware propagation, or just general disruption of the internet. Imagine the following: you have enlisted 10 of your friends to call the Department of Motor Vehicles at the same time on the same day. Aside from the deafening sounds of ringing phones and skewering of stray employees, not much else would happen. Now imagine you wrangled 100 of your friends to do the same thing. Simultaneous influx of such a large number of signals, pings, and requests would overload the DMV's phone system, like shutting it down completely. Cyber criminals use botnets to create a similar disruption on the internet. They command their infected bot army to overload a website to a point that it stops functioning or access is designed. Such an attack is called denial of service attack or DDoS. Botnets are not typically created to compromise just one individual computer. They're actually designed to infect millions of devices. Bot herders also called as bot masters, often deploy botnets onto computers through a Trojan horse virus. The strategy typically requires user to infect their own system by opening email attachments, clicking on malicious pop-up ads, or downloading dangerous softwares from a website. After infecting devices, botnets are then free to access and modify personal information, attack the computers, and commit other crimes. More complex botnets can even self propagate, finding and infecting devices automatically. Such autonomous bots carry out seek and infect missions, constantly searching the web for vulnerable internet connected devices lacking operating system updates or antivirus software. Botnets are difficult to detect. They use only small amounts of computing power to avoid disrupting normal device functions and alerting the users. More advanced botnets are even designed to update their behavior so as to thwart detection by cybersecurity software. Users are unaware their connected devices is being controlled by cybercriminals. What is worse, botnet design continues to evolve, making newer versions harder to find. Botnets take time to grow. Many will lay dormant within devices waiting for the botmaster to call them to action for a DDoS attack or spam dissemination. Botnets can infect almost any device connected directly or wirelessly to the internet. PCs, laptops, mobile devices, DVRs, smartwatches, security cameras, smart kitchen appliances can all fall within the web of a botnet. Although it seems absurd to think of a refrigerator or coffee maker becoming the unwitting participant in a cybercrime, it happens more often than most people realize. Often appliance manufacturers use unsecured password to guard entry into the devices, making them easy for autonomous bots scouring the internet to find and exploit. As the never ending growth of the Internet of Things brings more devices online, cyber criminals have greater opportunities to grow their botnets and with it the level of impact. A large DDoS attack has happened in 2016 which actually hit the internet infrastructure company called Rivian. The attack used a botnet compromised of security cameras, DVRs. The DDoS disrupted internet service for large sections of the country, creating problems for many popular websites like Twitter and Amazon. Aside from DDoS attack, bot must also employ botnets for other malicious purpose like ad fraud. What is ad fraud? Criminals, cyber criminals can use the combined processing power of botnets to run fraudulent schemes. For example, Botmaster builds an ad fraud scheme by commanding thousands of infected devices to visit fraudulent website and click on ads placed there. For every click, the hacker then gets a percentage of the advertising fees. Selling and renting botnets. This is also happening. Botnets can even be sold or rented on the internet after infecting and wrangling thousands of devices. Botmasters look for other cyber criminals interested in using them to propagate malware. Botnet buyers then carry out cyber attacks, spread ransomware, or steal personal information. Laws surrounding botnets and cybercrime continue to evolve as botnets become bigger threats to internet infrastructure, communication system, and electrical grids. Users will be required to ensure their devices are adequately protected from infection. it's likely cyber laws will begin to hold users more responsible for cyber crimes committed by their own devices. So in the next class, Sridhar, we will discuss botnet structures, okay, and architecture of the botnets, and the diagram of DOS and DDoS, and case study. All these things we will discuss in the next class. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Hello, Sridhar. We'll stop at
Yes,
this
sir.
stage now.
Yes, sir.
We'll stop. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Please join to the next class.
Yes, sir.